What if it's true?
Do I need to remind you what is out there?
Once upon a time, I had somebody that I cared about. And in this world, that sort of shit's good for one thing. Getting you killed.
I need something smuggled out of the city. It's just cargo, Joel.
I just want some simple gear, enough to set me on my way.
I reckon it's got something to do with that girl.
It's got everything to do with that little girl.
It can't be any worse than in here. Can it?
We're shitty people, Joel. It's been that way for a long time.
No, we are survivors.
This is our chance.
It is over, Tess!
What are you so afraid of?
You're treading on some mighty thin ice here.
What do we do?
You make every shot count.
You see, I believe everything happens for a reason.
We don't have to do this. You know that, right?
After all we've been through. Everything that I've done. It can't be for nothing. PlayStation.
Okay, cool. How you doing, everybody? So, just like Wes said, my name is Judd Simantov. I'm going to be talking about The Last of Us and the character rigs for The Last of Us. Those two main characters that you saw there, Joel and Ellie, they're going to be kind of the focal point of the presentation. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the things, and there's a lot of visuals, show you guys a lot of stuff. There's a couple character considerations that needed to happen at the beginning when we started doing this. The Last of Us is a really, really strong narrative, and so we really needed the characters to support that. So there was from the get-go, we needed to make sure that they were going to be able to carry the story and really move things forward. We wanted to push realism and subtlety in the acting. When we did Uncharted, it was definitely sort of more pushed, and with The Last of Us, definitely want to keep things toned down and a lot more subtle. And of course, even though we're still on the PS3, we wanted to really push the envelope technically, right? So people need to look at it and go, man, that's a nice jump from Uncharted 2, Uncharted 3, etc. So we'll talk about the faces first, and then we'll move on to talking about the bodies. I think the faces are definitely one area that was a lot more challenging, just in terms of how we can move it forward, but it was probably the most important part for us. The rigs in the face are all joint-based. So we have a couple blend-shape correctives, which we'll get into and talk about, but mostly it's joints. This is the same system we used on Uncharted, how we drove the joints, and there's 98 joints in the face. So it's a pretty high number, but that number didn't go up that much from Uncharted to The Last of Us. We basically just kind of really worked out better where to place them and where to use them and stuff. And I'll have a demo of you of the face moving and things like that. But and we use the same system and the same tools that we've been using previously. We also implemented something new that was really interesting, where we would rig the face with the eyes half closed and then the mouth open. And what it allowed us to do is, in this area here where there's a crease, we were able to basically alleviate a lot of stretching and a lot of darkening on the eyes. So by doing it this way, we kept it half open, and when we sampled normal maps, you would get a really clean eye, and you'll see a video of that just now. We did a presentation on Uncharted 2 where that was one of the key problems we had, so this really helped us fix it. It also allowed us to retain the shape of the actual eyelid better, because we didn't have such a far distance to move, versus if we started high up, we got to bring everything down and create that shape. So that was a huge gain, and it has some pipeline issues you have to deal with, and you want to make sure that when you're doing that the eyes are open when you're trying to get approval, because anyone who looks at that character is not going to approve that and say, yes, move forward, looks good. We also try to base the faces a lot more closely off of FACS. For those of you that are not familiar with FACS, it's a facial action coding system, and it's basically really breaking down the face into muscle groups. So we used that a lot more extensively, and it kind of gave us a much more anatomical approach to the rig. That was a bit of an adjustment for the animators, but once we got the hang of it, we were able to get stuff that really felt real. The other thing was pushing the extremes. You know, this is always difficult. You kind of, the face doesn't move a lot, but then all of a sudden you want to do something really big and really trying to push that and get a sense of tension. One of the things you don't see here, we do have wrinkle maps that will like help the wrinkles come through. And we didn't get that in this, and I didn't have it in this but we have it in the game, and it really helps as well. But the big challenge is also really taking the stuff, pushing the tension, but keeping the character on model, so it still looks like the character, you know, and it doesn't end up looking like a whole different character. And that was a nice challenge for us. We really went through quite a few iterations on that. So this is a quick video demo of Joel. Just some stuff, you'll see his face, just kind of how it moves through things, some of the shapes. And it's just kind of scrubbing through some of the different extremes, some of the stuff his face can do. You can see it, we really try to make everything feel nice and organic. And Joel's actually all joints. There's no blend shapes in his face at all. And it was really cool, the fidelity we were able to achieve. And having the beard in there was a nice challenge as well. And you can see the density of the geometry, which we'll talk about a bit as well. But that's how much of the stuff is moving. And this is just something quite important to see, is that a lot of games are sort of struggling or don't necessarily get that feeling of a connectedness in the face. Things feel isolated, and we really wanted to push everything kind of moving together and really feeling like an organic piece. And those are some of the joints moving, so you can just see kind of the joints, what they look like, how they move. Yeah. I would say for the faces, probably the biggest jump was an artistic jump. Just a better understanding of things and pushing things artistically way more than any new fancy technical thing that we came up with. We did go with higher mesh densities, which really, really helped. I mean, when you look at that, it's pretty high res, but it definitely allowed us to get a lot more of the volumes and shapes in things. So when you see sneers and you see smiles, a lot of those areas tend to be quite coarse. You know, they don't have a lot of geometry and a lot of stuff. And we really try to get a lot of stuff in there, even all the way up here on the forehead. It allowed us to create much cleaner silhouettes as well, right? When you're looking at the character, it doesn't feel like a low poly character. And we'll talk a bit about these correctives that we would sculpt on top, but having the geometry in there made it easy. Because if you ever try to sculpt on top of something that doesn't have enough geometry, it really kind of gives you a problem. So here's just a quick video where you can see some of the geometry close up. But we also kept the geometry really clean and quadded, right? So it's nice and evenly dispersed. It gets a little bit higher resolution, but it really does give you a much a cleaner sculpt, and it's easier to create shapes out of it. It's easier to sculpt on. There's a lot of stuff also within the mouth, trying to just, you know, get different shapes in there and stuff like that. So another thing we added, which was a really awesome gain, was we never had pupil dilation before. And it's interesting because it's actually such an easy thing to set up, but it was just one of those things where we just weren't pushing that degree of subtlety. And so we added that as well. And you can see that's extreme and it's kind of freaky, but it basically gives you the idea of what we can achieve. And so when somebody would just, you know, if for example, Ellie's scared for a second or she walks into a room and the room is dark, you can just quickly play on that. And it really adds a nice feeling of realism. So that was one of the things we had. It was really cool. And then eyelids, we basically previously, you know, we had the issue that I was describing earlier where we weren't able to retain a nice shape and we were getting this dark mark. With this, what we also wanted to do was we wanted that the eyeball movement felt really nice. The lid followed, which I'm going to show you now. And also, when you blinked and moved your eye, that kept a clean shape. So this is an example of that. Now, you'll see the eyes moving like under the actual skin. And it comes up, and it's always trying to create really clean shapes. And so at no point does it look broken. There were definitely moments in Uncharted when we were working on stuff where at certain angles it started to fall apart. And so we spent a lot of time making sure that no matter where she looked, no matter if she was blinking, if she was squinting, I'll just play that again for you, that at all times it were held up and kept a clean shape. And yeah, so it really looks, and a lot of it just kind of happens automatically as well, which is nice. So you don't have to, the animators are not sitting there having to finesse it too much. Cool. So I spoke about this before. Blend shape correctives, there's multiple terms for them, but basically the idea is that you use the joints to get you 80% of your pose, and then that extra level of fidelity that you can't get just because joints are not giving it to you, you sculpt a blend shape, an additive blend shape on top of it. So we used Mudbox to do that, and it was really easy to jump in and out of Maya and Mudbox. It was really great for us to do that. Obviously, the joints have limited fidelity, so this was awesome. We could really get those volumes and things like that we were lacking. It does add some complexity to the pipeline, because if you end up rigging something all the way through and creating this corrective, and then they request a model change, well, now you got to kind of go back and redo the underlying thing, and then you got to redo that. And so it added some complexity, but ultimately the game was worth it. So here you'll see them. We had about 14 on Ellie's face. We had a whole bunch on the bodies as well. It was really a cool addition for us to be able to get this. You know, like you can just see some of the volumes we could get in. And these shapes are all additives, which means that it's the joints and then the sculpt. So they look pretty subtle. But then when you see them on together, which you'll see a bit of just now, and you can see like they're just being able to get that crease for like the crow's feet when she squints. So then you just take the squint pose and you take that and you combine them, and you'll get something really cool. So I will show you here. I'm just going to switch some things on. So this is the cheek puff that comes on, and it's a bit subtle. You don't really see, but I'll go to the smile as well and show you. But that's with the shape, and then when we turn off the blend shapes, you'll see how much volume gets lost. And so it's subtle, but it starts to make a big difference in terms of really creating a round volume. And then this is a smile now. You'll see the smile has a lot of crease in and a lot of volume. And so just getting those little corners and the cheek bulging. And I'll show you again. I'll turn it off in a sec. So then that's with, and then this is without the blend shape. And that one's pretty obvious. You really lose that nice silhouette when you take away the blend shape. So they're not supposed to be these huge changes, but it's just enough to give you volume and things like that. And of course we use that stuff like to really shape elbows and things like that, which was cool. So those were kind of the big changes and things that we did on the face and some of the key high-level stuff. I'm not going to go into super technical detail about stuff, but that's kind of high level. And then obviously then we are going to look at the body now. So the body is combined with the body and face. There's 326 joints in everything. 85 of those are runtime driven. So what that means is that they're not baked animation. Essentially, they're proceduralized. They work in the engine using the processor, no memory hits. And so we could do like set-driven keys and constraints and things like that. And then 241 of them are actually sampled where they get baked into animation. And most of those joints end up getting skinned to something. So, you know, it's quite a lot of stuff, but you'll see we had a lot of joints to do a lot of simple things. We also, moving forward, we had the opportunity, now that the Uncharted series was over, we had the opportunity to kind of reevaluate certain things. And so we wanted to relook at the skeleton setup and how to just kind of make it a bit better. So we neutralized some of the posing. You can see here in the spine. We really kind of softened some of the spine, which was nice. We kept the leg pretty straight, just so that when you put the IK, it doesn't pop backwards. So it still has a little bit of a angle to it, but it's not a big one. We kept his pose pretty relaxed as well. And ultimately, it made for better deformations, cleaner animation. And then the other thing we added was the carpal joints in the hand. This is something we never had before, and it really allowed us to kind of shape hands better. So I don't have examples of the poses, but you just go through this video. You can just kind of see the joints that are in there and how they affect the skin in. This is, again, one of those subtle things, but when you actually look at a hand, excuse me, when you look at a hand and you do stuff like that, you really kind of see things shifting. Yeah. Cool. So yeah, that's basically it. And there's the 3 here. We always had the pinky one and the thumb, but that was a nice addition. We got some really dynamic hand poses out of that. The other thing we had is these mover controls. So we always had the joints that we use for twisting and dispersing them, but we never exposed them to the animators. So at some point we decided, you know what, we're spending so much time trying to get weight in and everything to be so perfect. Well, why don't we open up the controls a little bit? Really, really subtle. If you push this too far, it looks weird, but it's just basically these extra controls that the animators can just kind of shift around. They can rotate them, scale them. And the idea is to stay this subtle with them, right? Not to try to like just fix a little penetration, rotate something a little bit. The idea is not to go and create Warner Brothers, you know what I mean? But this was great. This was really cool. It allowed the animators to fix a lot of the one-off problems that we as riggers would otherwise have to go back and try to fix, you know, in a generalized fashion. Don't worry, that's got a video. So these cone readers are something that we had working in Uncharted as well. A guy, Tyler Thornock, really kind of got this setup working nicely. He's one of the TDs at Naughty Dog. And the idea is we use these cones, which you'll see, but it allowed us to drive these joints. So these 3 joints would really fix the wrist deformation. And so you'll see when it rotates, they get driven. But we're not driving them with set-driven keys, because set-driven keys can give you like Euler pops and things. So it's these, like we have these cones, and as you move in and out of a cone, it outputs a value. And we would basically use that value to then go and drive those joints. And so then you can just see that it's sort of like fixing it the whole time, trying to maintain volume. This was probably one of the more annoying things to have to set up, but you know, in the end, you want to be able to do that and keep volume and stuff. And we had to have, you know, for all the different angles, but it really ended up helping in the long run. So this is a cool thing we added. When we finished Uncharted 2, that's when I got moved on to this. And at the same time, we had Uncharted 3 working, and there was a horse in Uncharted 3, and we figured, oh, we want these big kind of, you know, muscles moving and stuff. And I was like getting frustrated with how we had to do a lot of the deformations to fix areas in Uncharted. So I thought, you know what, let me write like a muscle system. It's not anatomically accurate. It's essentially these muscle shells, and you'll see a video of it now. But basically, they just bulge based on distance. It's really, really quick. So when I say real time, I mean inside of Maya, it works in real time. It doesn't work in the engine. So you attach the joints to them, and then you drive the stuff. And yeah, it allowed us not to have to use any of the constraints or set-driven keys that in this scenario were a little bit annoying to work with, primarily because of Euler flips again. So this is a video where you can just see, like, when you're lifting up the shoulder, everything is kind of moving around. It really pushes up some of the joints, like on there and there. It has a bulge parameter you can play with, but it ultimately keeps this whole volume. And once you attach it to the joints, you really just get everything for free after that. And it's really light and it's really easy to set up. You know, a lot of muscle systems take a lot of effort. Like doing the stomach is awesome. It just kept this like volume and it created the creases there for us. So it was really easy to do, really easy to set up. I wrote the plugin in a couple days. It didn't take very long. And it's a huge gain for us. And all we had to do was just pick kind of the big areas. We didn't use it everywhere. And then they do have dynamic properties where they can like jiggle and stuff, but it became kind of overkill and a little bit annoying to use it for this stuff. So I'll just show you again here some of the... You just attach things in the correct place, but like right there, just how it would push things out was awesome. And we would weight to it however we wanted to weight. I mean, we didn't have to weight it 100%. Excuse me. So the other thing is there's a whole lot of different ways you can approach twisting and distributing the twist down the arm. You can do it just with native stuff, and it's fine. But it takes longer to set up. There wasn't a unified approach to it. And it's something that we just wanted to create an easy, clean way to set up. And we didn't want it to flip easily. You know, it needed to really kind of retain itself. So I wrote this plugin called Twist Dispersion. And it's basically like using quaternion math to basically distribute the twists. And what it allows is you get kind of really nice twists. You can distribute how much you want it to go up and down a joint. And you can choose for it to do a distribution different for forward than you would have for back. So that was really helpful, because the way things distribute when you're going forward versus back is actually a little bit different. And it's those same joints that we're using as mover controls. And you will see on the wrist, we had the same thing. A quick note for the wrist. One of the big things we did on the forearm as well is when doing the weighting of the wrist, we really wanted to get the sense that there's two bones that are twisting around each other, and they kind of stay locked here, which is anatomically how it works. So when you watch it, that's sort of what you see, where it really feels like the bone is twisting around the other bone. That was just an artistic thing, nothing technical, you know, that we just kind of really pushed. But you can see the twist holds up really well. We weren't getting flips. If you go like 360 degrees, you might get a flip, but otherwise it holds up really, really well. And it's easy to set up, which is awesome. And it tells you what the twist value is, so you know exactly what the value is when it's coming out. We did also use, and this is not necessarily something new, but it's something we just kind of just made more use of, is runtime helpers. Like I was saying earlier, proceduralized set-driven key joints that work in real time. And we had a lot of problems where like a character would lift its leg and it would penetrate the clothing and it would look really bad. So what we wanted to do was just kind of have these little things to help. So when it lifts at a certain point, it starts to lift the clothes. This is a catch-22, right? Because if you do it too much and you isolate it, it looks super linear and really robotic. But if you don't have it and it penetrates, it looks terrible in like a still pose. So you really want to kind of use it in such a way that I'll just play it again while I'm talking about it. You really want to just kind of use it in a way where it's subtle enough that it just helps you from getting penetration in the, you know, through the clothes, but that it's not something that you're expecting to like solve cloth, because ultimately it just looks very rubbery and it doesn't look good. So we use it minimally, but it definitely helped us to prevent from that. So in conclusion, I think we were able to create characters that really carried the narrative just like we set out to do. I mean, when you watch that trailer in the beginning, there's everything from really, really subtle moments to really high extremes, where, you know, they're shouting and you're seeing all this tension. We push the technology and tools without reinventing the wheel. You know, sometimes you can go down the road of trying to push things so far that you're just trying to make new things for the sake of new. And I think we did a good job of upgrading everything, but like building on the foundation that we had established before. And the faces were a really nice, it was like this nice step up in able to achieve the subtlety. And I think it's something as a studio, like Naughty Dog is going to keep taking forward, just kind of that balance of subtlety versus extremes. And like I said, with the body deformations, we definitely were more specific and improved them a lot, but also we increased productivity and efficiency in terms of streamlining them, which was a big thing. So a lot of those tools didn't always necessarily make something artistically better, but it made the process easier. And then in some instances, because of that, you've got more time to focus on the art, right? So they kind of work hand in hand. So that's the thing. Thanks to everybody at Naughty Dog, obviously, and to Autodesk for bringing me out to do this.